Let me set the scene for you. You are my flock of familiars. This is my domain. And I am a weaver of stories and magic alike. Welcome to RPG Horror Stories, narrated by me, Limerence. A little introduction is in order first. I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons for over 8 years now, and have brief experiences in other tabletop RPGs, like Blades in the Dark and the Savage Worlds system. I've been a player in various groups and DM to others, some of close friends, others of strangers from across the realms. And so for my first astral projection on this channel, I wanted to tell you a little story from my own personal experience. A quick disclaimer for you. There are themes of SA throughout this story. The R word used in actuality has been changed to SA so that the YouTube pantheon doesn't smite me. While the game was strictly online and the characters and places fictional, this is still no excuse for this behaviour, especially when not discussed with players beforehand. With that out of the way, let's get on to our story. This was a rather large group of people for what I'm used to. I admit that had I known the DM was going to keep adding players before the start of the campaign, I would not have joined the game in the first place. For context, there were 8 or 9 of us in total, including the DM, and this took place around 6 or 7 years ago. This was a game I was invited to by the DM, a complete stranger, after putting out an advertisement on a D&D Discord somewhere. All the people involved were strangers to me. I don't recall everyone. Some characters are certainly more important than others to this story, so I will go into some detail regarding them here. The DM. He was a really lovely guy, just a bit in over his head and passive. I feel he took on a bit too much with the amount of players he'd invited, and when things kicked off, he was unable to take control of the situation. He also invited his wife midway through the start of the campaign, and they shared a mic and a webcam, which was awkward and didn't really work, but she was also really nice. The female cleric of Sune. The problem child. They didn't put their webcam on throughout the whole game, which wasn't a major issue, as it wasn't enforced. I just prefer seeing who I'm playing with and getting an idea of when people want to speak up for an online game. Otherwise, I find crosstalk and accidental interruptions run rampant. They were brash and didn't care much for player etiquette, interrupting and always had the excuse of, "It's what my character would do." Yes, they were one of those. The Furbolg Ranger. One of the better role players in the group and genuinely a nice guy. He's pretty important, but I'll leave that for later in the story. Also very passive, a running theme throughout the group it seems. The Bard, another nice guy, not your typical Bard player. He has a small part to play in this story, but it's still important. The other players were a Druid, which was Ranger's in-character sister, a Fighter, a Warlock, the DM's wife, and a Rogue. Then there was me, a Tiefling Sorcerer. There may have been others, I just don't recall specifics. Also to note, I was the only female in the group outside of our characters, until the DM's wife later joined a session or two after the incident I'm about to cover. I feel like this has meaning, considering the passive natures of the men in the group when everything happens. We had a session 0, I believe, though I don't recall it being super in-depth. We covered the intention for the campaign, its themes and general premise. I think I brought up webcams as an option. Some people were on board, some others weren't, and that was okay with me. Then we began our adventure. It was the usual start to a campaign. We met in a tavern to be hired onto a job, where we began role-playing our characters and introducing ourselves to each other. I started getting weird vibes from the cleric pretty immediately. They were very brash, as I mentioned previously, and inserted themselves into everything. Oh, and they flirted with absolutely everyone, and spoke in this overly suggestive tone that was, well, rather grating. Eventually, they ended up flirting with the Bard, suggesting that they go upstairs and share a room, and the Bard agreed, though it seemed to me like their player was reluctant and that he was just trying to portray his character in the way he envisioned them. Plus, we were complete strangers in and out of character, so I'm sure that had something to do with it. But that was that. They shared the night, faded to black, and we got on our way the next morning. The next session was fine from what I remember. It was fairly combat heavy, and combat takes a lot of time when you have a small party, let alone a party of 8 or 9. Cleric hadn't changed their advances on everyone, but was at least moving forward when the group progressed. We get to our first long rest on our travels, and then it happens. The bud that flowers into this horror story you're hearing. DM. You bed down for the night under the stars, in the middle of this forest around a secluded campfire. Cleric. A ranger. Make a perception check. Ranger. Okay. Ranger delays, seemingly expecting the DM to step in, which they did not. And the ranger rolls poorly. Cleric. Okay, you failed your perception check, so I take my silk rope and I tie you up, and then I ride you all night long without you waking up because you're so exhausted.
Wait a minute!
Nobody speaks up. Nobody. Me. Excuse me? You're just gonna essay him? Cleric. No, it's not essay. I'm just spreading Sune's love. For context, Sune is a goddess in the Forgotten Realms lore who rules over love, beauty, and passion. Her worshippers are usually portrayed in taking good care of their physical appearance, enjoying perfumes, poetry, and bathhouses, which can often be temples, and they are very free-thinking and open. Also for context, I was in another campaign around this time, though it was very slow-moving, which is why I sought a second campaign to begin with. In this other game, I was playing a cleric of Sune. I continue to chastise the cleric, telling them how this is definitely SA and nobody had consented to this. I was quite alarmed, which I feel was justified because it was, well, disgusting. The rest of the group were guys, as the DM's wife wasn't present at this time, and nobody else spoke up, but you could see the look on their faces of those who had their cameras on. They were shocked. The cleric continued to deny and defend themselves, and the DM tried their best to brush over it and move along with the game. I sat back quietly, completely in disbelief that these things actually happen, and that no one was saying anything. But I attended the next couple of games regardless, before leaving entirely. There was another incident a session before where the group were breaking into a vault in an old ruin, and the cleric scrambled in first before everyone else, announcing it loudly so they could grab the loot. An oath bow that was put in the game for the ranger. But no, the cleric had grabbed it first and wasn't giving it up for anything. This pales in comparison to the previous issue I mentioned, but it was still something that was just not okay. I spoke to the DM privately after the SA debacle, and he knew it was unacceptable, but refused to boot the player from the game. Luckily enough, the cleric decided they didn't want to come back because they felt like they couldn't play their character properly and was being treated unfairly. Yes, you heard that correct. They were being treated unfairly. Ultimately, I left because of a magnitude of reasons, despite the cleric leaving after their antics didn't go over well and they couldn't get their own way. I couldn't get past the fact that nobody spoke up about this issue, and that nothing was done to the player who caused it. It also turned out to be quite railroady, but that was neither here nor there. I believe the DM mentioned about streaming this game. Thank gods he didn't. At this point, I'd like to be able to give some constructive advice following our story. My advice in this scenario? Don't be that guy. Don't do it. Please. Seriously though, always make sure you have an open line of communication with your group, players and DM alike. And if you have ideas about romance or conflict RP that you want to introduce into your game, talk to them about it. Make sure they're okay with it. If you're finding strangers online to play with, give people the benefit of the doubt, but don't hesitate to call that stuff out when you see it. And ultimately, if you feel like things are bad, leave. No D&D is better than bad D&D. It's a common statement for a reason. Thank you for listening to my humble ramblings. Subscribe and like the video if you'd like to see more TTRPG content from me. If you have any stories you'd like me to read, react to, or maybe give advice around, please link them below in the comments. You can also expect other TTRPG content from me in the future, so if you have any subjects you'd like me to cover, please leave those in the comments below as well. For now, I bid you farewell, my flock of familiars.